It's time for the Michael Huddleston Show on HUDdradio.com.
I appreciate your input. 832-699-0110 is the number you need to call. Like us on our Facebook page at www.facebook.com/HUDRadio. The Texas voter ID law went to the courts in Washington today, and they will discuss how all that will come out. A couple thoughts on that really quickly is I don't understand why it is such a big deal. And as you'll hear later in our conversation with Congressman Burgess, it befuddles me why it is such a big deal to show a photo ID to prove that you live in this state so that you can vote here. The left has continually brought arguments against that, saying that it leaves out the Hispanic and the black vote. But how hard is it to get an ID card in this state? To say that you live here and that you have the right to vote here. It doesn't make sense. It's a whole left liberal way of getting votes, because those who are A, illegal, or B, live poor are going to vote for the liberals because those are the ones that are giving them amnesty and Medicaid. Also happening in this today, there were 5 people that were indicted on the Brian Terry case. Now, that is the case of the Border Patrol agent that was shot and killed along the U.S. border, and it ended up that the guns that were used to kill him, the guns that were in the hands of the cartels, were guns that were part of the Fast and Furious scandal. And if you've lived under a rock and you don't know anything about that, the Fast and Furious scandal was, in a nutshell, was a operation that the Justice Department put on, and the district attorney, Eric Holder, signed off on it. And it was where we would flood the cartels with guns in an attempt for the cartels to use them to ramp up the fear of the cartels in Mexico, therefore sparking debates in Congress on border security. And all that came apart and ended up with the death of Brian Terry. There were 5 people that were indicted. None of them had the name Eric Holder, which is one that should have been brought up. He was found in contempt of Congress for not providing documents related to Fast and Furious. So it's going to be interesting to see how that turns out as well. But tonight, the main course for this show is going to be our interview with Michael Burgess. He is over the 26th District in the U.S. House of Representatives. He is over North Texas. He was a doctor for 3 decades up in North Texas. So here's the audio from our interview with Dr. Michael Burgess. Joining us on the phone this evening, we have the pleasure of talking to Congressman Dr. Michael Burgess, who serves in Washington for the great state of Texas. He is on the House Energy and Commerce Committee. He is the vice president of the Subcommittee on Health and founder of the current chairman of the Congressional Health Care Caucus, and he was a doctor in North Texas for 3 decades. Nice for you to join us, Dr. Burgess.
Well, Michael, it's great to be with you, and certainly want to thank you for having me on your show.
Well, you're very welcome. You're welcome anytime. Now, with those accolades, it's pretty clear you're a doctor. So,
well, this has been it's been a tough time, just from a physician's perspective, to watch the twists and turns that this administration has taken us through for the last 3 years, and obviously culminating in the Supreme Court decision a little over a week ago. That was, I don't mind telling you, it was a pretty significant disappointment for me. I thought they would find the entire law unconstitutional, not severable, and strike the whole thing down, and apparently I came within about an inch of having that become a reality, but fumbled the ball on the 1-inch line, and as a consequence, now we're back where we were before, which is trying to educate the people of this country that they have one more chance to remedy what is a very bad law, a law that was a result of a very flawed process, a law that, if it's allowed to stand, likely will end up costing the country not just dollars and not just freedom. It actually may cost us our health care system. So badly is the construct of this thing. But the fight moves now from the congressional committees, then to the Supreme Court, and now actually it's in the court of public opinion, and the people get one more chance to tell us their wisdom on this. I trust they're going to reject it, as every poll has suggested they will. But we can leave nothing to chance, as we've found so far, and the fight is on for November.
Absolutely, and I had a question. The thing that comes to my mind first off is that, like you said, the Supreme Court upheld it. They upheld it under the tax clause, which I thought was kind of interesting in the first place. But the president has said on numerous occasions that this bill would not raise taxes and that the burden would fall 90% on the federal government and 10% on the states. Did the courts do for Obama what he said he would not do?
Well, look, anybody who doesn't think that this president doesn't have a propensity for prevarication just hasn't been paying attention. This law would have never passed. I don't think it would have passed the House. Certainly they would have never got 60 votes in the Senate if they had said, here's a huge tax bill that we want you to vote for, and because it also has to do with health care. Had it been called what it actually was, you wouldn't have gotten 60 votes in the Senate, and I dare say you wouldn't have gotten 218 votes in the House. I mean, it was passed by the slimmest of margins, always on a single-party vote, but I promise you, there are Democrats who did not want to vote for a tax increase of this size. Now, the president, go back on his word when he said, I will not raise taxes on the middle class. He's gone back on his word so many times that, who believes him anymore? But senators who are now facing re-election and will face re-election in 2 years' time, these are the folks who were elected first in 2006 and 2008, big wave years for the Democrats, where some people got into the United States Senate that otherwise might not have. They're going to have a tough time defending their vote in favor of the Affordable Care Act.
Absolutely. Now, Governor Perry came out today and announced that Texas would not expand its Medicaid program or set up an insurance swap. What impact does this have on the federal government, and is this just simply political rhetoric?
No, it's not political rhetoric, and the governor is doing exactly the right thing because, look, let's face it, the federal government has been an unreliable partner when it comes to health care if you're a state. And Governor Perry is quite correct in not wanting to do anything to put that relationship in even a tougher position for the state of Texas. If the federal government wants to do something, fine, let them do it, but he's not going to obligate the state any more than what he already has. And this was, of course, the one narrow victory that was achieved at the level of the Supreme Court. The states do not have to do the Medicaid expansion as called for under the Unaffordable Care Act and risk losing their other Medicaid dollars. So those Medicaid dollars that are coming to kids, to low-income pregnant women, that are coming to the blind and disabled in nursing homes, those dollars are not jeopardized. The expansion under the way the federal government had initially envisioned it, it was either all or nothing. But the Supreme Court did say that, look, this Medicaid expansion is something different and apart from what the original contract was, and the states will not jeopardize their funding for the traditional Medicaid programs if they choose not to undergo this large expansion. Now, what is going to happen at the federal level is the Congressional Budget Office is going to have to come back in and recalculate the cost of this thing, and I suspect the cost will have gone up significantly from 2 or 3 years ago when they first priced it, but also the coverage numbers. And remember, all of the debate in the spring and summer of 2009 had to do with cost and coverage numbers on what became known as the Affordable Care Act. The coverage numbers are clearly going to go down, and people are going to see, hey, we spent $2 trillion, $2.5 trillion, and we covered only a fraction of the people that we said we were going to cover. Maybe this wasn't such a good deal after all.
And really quickly, because we're running out of time with you, Congressman, the Texas voter ID law went to the courts. What do we have to expect out of this as Texans?
Well, of course, the Department of Justice has not been a friend of the state of Texas, and yet at the same time, the Supreme Court has held that other states could, in fact, have voter ID programs in place. Look, I've just gotten into the habit when I go vote, I just hand them my driver's license. That's that way I don't have to keep up with yet another card, and it seems to work fairly well. For the life of me, I don't understand. Look, I don't do a lot of polling in my congressional district and the congressional district that I represent, but I'll tell you something that polls very positively, and that's photo ID for voting. People get that. It's about an 82% issue amongst Democrats in the North Texas area.
Well, Congressman, I really appreciate the time that we've had with you here today, and thanks for talking about the Unaffordable Care Act, as you called it. I liked that one a lot.
if anybody wants to learn a little bit more about it, I do have a book that came out about a year ago called Doctor in the House. It's still available on Amazon, and it's a pretty readable for a health policy book. It's if I do say so myself, it's a pretty readable accounting of what happened that allowed this thing to come to us in the first place. Now, of course, the entire thrust must be to get rid of it, and that's where we are now.
It sounds good. Tell us the name of the book one more time.
Doctor in the House, and it's available on Amazon.com.
Sounds good. Dr. Burgess, good luck in D.C., and hopefully we'll get to talk to you again.
Yes, Michael. Thank you for having me on.
Join us next time for more of The Michael Huddleston Show. Be sure and check out the Facebook page at www.facebook.com/mhudradio.